que se Well,
Hello. Welcome to Overwatch Tips, Tricks, Review. Today we're gonna talk about the big dude. You know, the guy with the hammer and the shield and the one who does the defenses. He does it just right. So today we're gonna talk about Reinhardt. Oh, what a man. How I wish I could wield the hammer the way he does. He also kind of looks like he could be Master Chief's dad. You know, like really old, really strong, really big suit of armor. He just didn't use a gun. I guess that's what his son did right? So I play this game pretty casually, and, you know, just come home, sit down, play with some friends, have a good time, have a couple laughs, win, lose. A lot of the losing part, but we're gonna ignore that. But ever since I started doing this series, and I've been paying more attention to all the characters and what they can do, and, you know, what they decide to take into battle with them, the more I realize that these characters are just psychopaths. I mean, I have yet to cover a character that has brought a proper weapon in to fight with. I guess I shouldn't say proper weapon, but, you know, like a gun. Instead, I cover someone like Reinhardt, who brings a hammer. A really big hammer. And not only is this thing a hammer, he put a rocket on the back! I would be terrified to live in the Overwatch universe. Yep, that's what I've decided. So let's talk about Reinhardt and some of the stuff he can do and just kind of generally about him. Reinhardt himself is one beefy boy. You know, he's coming in weighing about 500 HP, and he's just generally someone that I wouldn't want to fuck with. So talking about some of Reinhardt's abilities, Reinhardt's first ability is passive, and that's Steadfast. Now this ability logically makes sense, but I didn't know he actually had it until I made this video. What Steadfast does is it just kind of gives you a 30% resistance to being knocked back, which logically makes sense. He's huge. But this passive is super useful because when a Lucio comes up and he's always trying to knock you off an edge or anything, you just don't go as far. The other way I imagine it helps out is with with Hog's ultimate. Because Hog's ultimate doesn't only do damage, but it also does quite a bit of knockback. So with this passive, it might give you just enough time to be able to endure some of the pain, then turn around and just pull out your shield so that you can absorb most of that damage. Next up, we have Reinhardt's Rocket Hammer, his primary weapon. So this hammer deals 85 damage to anything that's in front of him when he swings it. Now, this weapon's a little broken. Because the swing takes so long, while you're in mid-attack, you can actually spin Reinhardt around, and he'll do 85 damage to anything around him. So essentially it turns him into Darius from League of Legends, and you can just kinda spin to win, you know? Next up we have Reinhardt's Barrier Field. This massive shield of energy that this dude just kind of pulls out of his pocket. It has 1600 health and only takes 5 seconds to completely regenerate after it's destroyed. Now when he does bring up the barrier, it does give him 30% less speed, but on the upside he can't be hurt by most projectiles that come from the front of him. Moving on to his next ability is his charge. His charge really gives him that mobility they need. It allows him to move at 200% speed, and whenever it actually directly hits an enemy with it and hits them against a wall, it deals 300 damage, which is enough to kill almost every damage and support character. And if he does it to another tank, 300 damage is a lot of damage to take. That's definitely more than half health for most tanks. But if he only bumps into you with the charge, then it gives you a little bit of a knockback and does 50 damage. Now this ability can be very dangerous because you can send yourself off edges. I mean, sometimes it's pretty cool when you pin like another Reinhardt, or you pin like a Hog that's ulting, and then you both just go off an edge into, you know, the nothingness, whatever's down in the clouds, or in the water in some maps. Because, you know, Overwatch characters can't swim. But overall, it's still super, you know, satisfying, and can be very useful in teamfights. Next up, we have Reinhardt's Fire Strike. Now, I don't know how he does it, but he just kind of swings his hammer upwards that launches this huge strike of fire out, and this strike of fire, it does 100 damage, and it can pierce anything. Well, by anything, I guess I should say any shields. So this thing can not only do 100 damage to that shield, but then it will travel through it and do 100 damage to anything that is behind it. Finally, we have Reinhardt's ultimate, which is his Earth Shatter. Now this ability can be devastating in teamfights, and it can also be easily cancelled out. Now Reinhardt's ultimate only does 50 damage to anything that's in front of him, but it knocks them prone down to the ground for 2.5 seconds. Which can easily give your team the upper hand, especially if you get the entire enemy team within the radius. because it gives your team the time to just respond and start getting free headshots and free kills on the ground. But with using his ultimate, you have to be very careful, especially if there's a McCree around, because he can completely cancel out your ult, especially if he throws a stun grenade. Also, anyone that has a shield ability, this ability does not go through shield, so it can easily be countered by Bridget, Orza, Zarya, another Rein, or even Monkey. Now, before we get into the tips and tricks part of this, I kind of want to cover some of the champions that counter Reinhardt. As good of a character as Reinhardt is, and for as much damage as he does, he can really easily be countered. Really, anyone that can stop his charge, that can stop his ultimate, I consider a counter to Reinhardt. So we're talking characters like Hanzo, Bridget, Doomfist, Ana, McCree, Symmetra, and even Junkrat. So now that that's out of the way, let's go over some tips and tricks of this big ol' boy. So there's two ways that you can play Reinhardt. One of those ways being just kind of sitting back, defending the team, especially if a Bastion on your team, you put your shield in front of them and then Bastion just lights up anything that's in front of you guys. Or the same thing for an Orza or McCree or Hanzo or Soldier, just defending your team, having that giant barrier up. You're not really doing much and it's kind of boring just to stand there, but you will win the game and you will, help your team in those team fights just by making sure that no one takes damage. And the second way being an up-in-your-face Rein. So due to the amount of damage that Reinhardt can do, you can easily just break through enemy lines, start smashing their squishier characters, even their tanky character, and just become an overall nuisance to the enemy team. You can easily secure kills, get attention off of your DPS and onto you, and break through enemy lines pretty easily. Now, choosing between these two styles of gameplay is situational for the most part, but I would say that it really depends on your healers. If you have an Ana or a Mercy, get in there, boy. Nothing ain't gonna stop you. I mean, if that Mercy and that Ana can really just focus on you, and you can have the entire enemy's attention on yourself, you're not really likely to be stopped. I mean, you could have Mercy healing or damage boosting you, and then Ana full focus healing on you, and when she gets ult, then she ults you, and you just become even more unstoppable. I mean, Reinhardt really is the definition of the unstoppable force. But if you don't have those two healers by your side, I'd say stick back. Having one or the other, you can still jump into fights and, become that unstoppable force that you wish to desire to be. But without having either of them, and not having that significant damage boost, or that significant, heal me only boost, you'll realize that Reinhardt's 500 health quickly turns to 0. As for using abilities efficiently and whatnot, you can use Reinhardt's barrier to stop any ult that does any kind of damage except for Zarya's ult and, area effect ults that don't quite cause damage but just kind of cause, status effects and whatnot. But you can use his barrier to stop a Diva ult, a McCree ult, a Soldier ult, and even another Rein's ult. As for his charge, you just kind of want to use this all the time. Pin anyone, there's not a bad character to pin, because ultimately you're just doing a shit ton of damage to him. I mean, obviously the best people to pin is another enemy that is ulting, or squishier characters, because you'll one-tap them, and, if you can pin them and hit them against a wall, that's it. But you can also use your charge to just kind of charge at other Reinhardts that have their shields up, because if your team's not doing any damage to their team, and their team's not doing any damage to your team, well, you can put an end to that. But most commonly, you want to use your charge with your ultimate. Speaking of Reinhardt's ultimate, you have to be very careful with it as well. Don't just try to run head on and, immediately set it off, because like I said earlier, it can be cancelled really easily. What you want to kind of do is try to get around the team or catch the team from above. Get on top of a building, jump to their side, and ult them. And then from that point, you have a few options you can do. You can use your charge, you can charge their healers or their tanks or, even their DPS. You can charge anybody, slam them against the wall, and, most likely kill them. Or you can set off your fire strike, hit quite a few of them, get most of them low, and then just start beating them to death with your rocket hammer. So since I covered some of Reinhardt's counters, and which is quite the list, it's a very large list, I should also talk about some of the characters that he's really good against. One of the characters that I would say that Reinhardt is probably the best against is Tracer. Tracer loves to be annoying. She loves to get behind enemy lines and just, start blowing headshots into you. But And most characters have a hard time hitting Tracer due to her dash, because she can just dash through any bullets that you shoot and not care. But Reinhardt, he doesn't use bullets. He has a giant hammer. So really, if you're playing Reinhardt and you find a Tracer behind enemy lines, just start swinging. Like, just chase her down, start swinging. If she gets away from you with her dashes, just use your Fire Strike. Or even ult her. It'll stop her in her place. The same theory goes for, like, Moira, because Moira has a dash as well, and she can get behind you and, just start sucking the life from you. But after that single dash, just start hitting her with your hammer, and you're good to go. I'd also say that Reinhardt is good against any character that doesn't have a shield or a stun. Mainly because Reinhardt's ultimate is a nullification to every other ultimate. It can interrupt any ultimate besides for maybe divas. So, overall, I give Reinhardt 7 German engineers out of 10. To be honest, this is just the way that I play him. I'm not the best Reinhardt out there, but if I played with him a little bit more and, practiced as him, I'd definitely be willing to bump that number to 10 out of 10. The reason being, he's got mobility, he's got super high damage output, he's very tanky, and he also has mass amounts of crowd control due to his ultimate. So, I hope you guys liked this video, and if you did, pin that like button against the wall, and make sure to leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me who I should do next. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!